morning. Welcome into Let's Bet It here on Pickswise. I am Mark Zinno, joined by Jared Lee Smith, the one and only, as we get you set for a Saturday slate, Major League Baseball, even some preseason football. We'll discuss some NFL and more. Make sure you guys subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. Let us know what comments and questions you have right there at the bottom of the screen if you're watching there as well. Download the Pickswise app, available at the Apple Store and Google Play. Jared, we have made it to the weekend. It is a very profitable week for you, as I see you are on a little bit of a heater here. We hope to continue it through the rest of today and the weekend.
Yeah, it's been okay. Yesterday we went 2-1 with our nerfy bets. And again, I was off the show yesterday. And I went 1-1 with walk props, but the one that I hit was a plus 185. The walk props have been a nice tailwind to the portfolio this season, but I'm curious how things go down the stretch because we've discussed it. We'll discuss it more in the Nerfy segment. Just, baseball gets a little funky in September. They do all these call-ups and, a lot of the lineups change and teams just completely go in the opposite direction. So we're kind of on that precipice right now where football comes into the forefront and baseball kind of gets a little bit pushed aside. So we'll see how we handle the transition. It's always an interesting transition. It's the sports equinox, right? We'll have hockey and basketball, all four sports to talk about probably in October. So exciting time of the year on that sports calendar.
All right, well, let's get it started with the latest from the NFL and the news of Deshaun Watson suspended for the first 11 games of the season. Now it's final, along with a $5 million fine. The Browns' win total drops from 9.5 to 8.5. Jared, does this change at all how you would bet the Browns if you're going to bet them?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think from what I heard from some of the sharper sources that I consume that, the move from Watson to Brissett's worth about 2 points, maybe 2.5 points. I can buy that. I can buy that. It's basically a field goal. And I think when you look at the Browns, they still have a lot of positive things going for them. And I'm curious how Brissett handles the long haul now, because we thought 6 games maybe was a nice little buffer, but now it's clearly going to be a lot longer. So I don't know if I feel differently about Cleveland this year. I still felt very neutral about the AFC North. I didn't have a very strong opinion on it coming in. I think the Ravens maybe are a little bit undervalued, but I don't know what we're going to get out of Pittsburgh with a new quarterback. I don't know what we're going to get Cincinnati coming off the Super Bowl hangover, which is very real. And obviously Cleveland is a massive unknown. So there's a lot of unknown entities in that division. And I don't think I feel any more strongly or not strongly about Cleveland after this move, because I think we all expected him to be out for a significant part of the year.
I mean, when you look at their schedule, okay, they have a very soft open to the first 4 games of the year. Carolina, the Jets, the Falcons, Pittsburgh and the Falcons. And again, Pittsburgh is a question mark. I think they would be a good team. Their defense is always pretty consistent under Mike Tomlin. But it's not out of the realm of possibility with that roster, given how good they are and that offensive line, that they could start out 4-0. I think the real question is, look, I would probably bet the under on the win total, just because you're only getting 6 games of Deshaun Watson, right? Like, you have to just kind of lean on the under in that spot. That said, the real question is for a rushing yard prop for Nick Chubb, which is just at last I saw under 1,200 yards at 1199.5. This is a guy that easily can get 1,200 behind that offensive line, but he's going to be facing a lot of 8-man fronts, and a lot of teams are going to almost dare Jacoby Brissett to beat them through the air. So it's a real question, I think, from there. What does it do to the prop market for some of these guys? Do guys like Austin Hooper and David Njoku, did their numbers see a skyrocket because there's not really a wide receiver core to speak of? Do you trust Amari Cooper to be a viable target for this team? So I think that's more of the issues. I think a lot of people will run away from Browns props more than anything, as opposed to a team win total number.
I agree. I think the point about the schedule is intriguing, because you would think that the Browns numbers will be downgraded, even though there shouldn't have been any ambiguity about those first 4 games, which are very easy, because there was always going to be at least a 6-game suspension. So he was never going to play in any of those 4 games. But, for example, I saw a couple of sports books take the Browns odds off the board week 1 after the 11-game suspension was announced. Nothing changed with week 1. that didn't make any sense to me when those numbers came off the books. Maybe there was just a small adjustment and they put him back up, but there shouldn't have been any adjustment because there shouldn't have been any ambiguity about him not playing in week 1 against Carolina. So I'm curious if you are getting just a little bit discount on Cleveland after the longer suspension was announced. You shouldn't. There always should have been a baked-in number in place week 1 against Carolina. But again, for some reason, that number did come off the board for, some reason or another at a couple of shops. So just something to keep in mind. I don't feel very strongly or passionately about the Browns this year. I just think it's a really tough handicap because they know going in they're only going to have their starting quarterback for at least now less than half the season. So AFC North, probably one of the tougher divisions to handicap ball this year, I would say.
Yeah, a lot of question marks out there. I feel good about the Ravens. I think the Bengals are primed for some pressure.
Agree.
Don't know what we'll do. And the Browns have the most talented roster. It's just a question of how much can they put it all together and win some games well. Deshaun Watson is serving out his suspension. All right, let's stay with the NFL. We have an NFC North preview here that we're going to go through, Jared. And you look at these 4 teams here. Obviously, the Packers are the favorite to win the division by a considerable number at minus 190. Their over-under win total is at 11. Let's start with them because there's been a lot of transition, a lot of turnover. Aaron Rodgers loses Devontae Adams as he moves on. This is a team that's won 13 games each of the last 3 years since Matt LaFleur has taken over, and yet it hasn't netted even one trip to the Super Bowl. So a lot of expectations. I think it's a moderate win total for this team, but it would not surprise me to see this team struggle a little bit early on until they can sort of get into a groove offensively. I still think their defense is what we're not talking enough about. This may be one of the better defenses in the NFC, if not the NFL this year, but still, the questions on the offense are fair.
They are. So to me, it turns into these younger receivers and how quickly they can get up to speed. I mean, I think we have known entities in guys like Allen Lazard and Sammy Watkins and Randall Cobb. When they're healthy, they will be average to slightly above average, you would think. It's really the Christian Watsons, the Romeo Doubs, those guys. Who is going to emerge? Is one of them going to emerge? Watson trending down, Doubs trending up from things we hear in training camp. You're right about the defense. Last year, they were, I would say, an average defense EPA per play. But when you have Aaron Rodgers and you're not being put in a lot of difficult spots and throwing interceptions and the Packers don't turn it over much, that is going to be a positive thing. Can that continue this year? The one thing I noticed about Devontae Adams, and again, when you deep dive into some of these games, maybe each game is different, but Packers scored 32 points, average 32 points per game in the 7 games without Adams throughout his Packers career. So you see that number that he got paid in Oakland and then or in Vegas and you see what Green Bay has been able to do without him. And there's hope, there's optimism, I think, that the Packers offense doesn't fall off too much. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of a drop off. But to me, they face a top 5 schedule in passing defenses this year. And I think there's going to be some growing pains with that offense. So maybe of all the years that they've won the division and have looked great doing so, maybe this is one of those years that isn't quite that. Maybe they had a grind to 10, 11 wins to win this division. In prior years, they've won, going away 13 games, number 1 seed in the NFC. Maybe that's not the kind of year Green Bay is going to have. But I still think you're right. There's a lot of talent there, especially on the defensive end, and it's still Aaron Rodgers. So it's really hard to doubt this team, seriously doubt them for the long haul of a 17-game season.
There is one prop I would look at for Green Bay that interests me, and that is Aaron Jones' receiving yards prop, if you can find it.
Yeah.
He may be the beneficiary of a lot of short passes, the way the Patriots used to use as an extension of the running game. He may be the beneficiary of a lot of checkdowns. If these guys can't get open, Rodgers may dump off to him sooner rather than later, and he may be used a lot more in the passing game than before. I don't love rushing and receiving yards props put together, but this is one spot where I think Aaron Jones can benefit from a lackluster wide receiver core and a one guy that Aaron Rodgers genuinely trusts in that offense to have the ball in his hands on a routine basis. Let's move on to the Minnesota Vikings. This is, again, I think this is an underrated team. I love their season win total over 9. This give me all the Vikings props I can get my hands on. This should be a top 10 offense, and I don't think it's a bad bet for them to win the North at plus 265. You're getting better than 2.5 to 1. If Green Bay falters, that is the one team that is there to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a 2-horse race in this division. I saw we get to the other 2 bottom feeders, the other 2 mammals, in just a minute, but it truly is. This is one division, maybe the only division in the NFL where I feel 100% certain that all teams can win it. I think the AFC South might be the other division I feel that way about, but sure. I'll be honest that there's a little bit of buzz with Jacksonville, maybe too much buzz, which is, well, again, that's a different story for a different day. But I think this is the one division where I'm like, yep, there's really only 2 teams, and I can't see a third really picking their head into the picture. So that being the case, you have to ask yourself about that number, plus 240-ish. Plus 200 is implying a 33% chance. Plus 250 is somewhere in the high 20s, low 30 probability range. So, yeah, I could see in 4 or in half of the hypothetical scenario, the Vikings win this division because Aaron Rodgers takes a step back, Kirk Cousins takes a step forward, Kevin O'Connell, new head coach, comes in, much anticipated from Mike Zimmer. I mean, goodness gracious, to me, that jump could be significant because last year the Vikings won 8 games despite Mike Zimmer, as I spill my coffee everywhere. Now, I think they can win 10, 11 games based on just their talent alone. And if Kevin O'Connell's scheme works, coming in from the Rams, he has all this buzz, that could be a bigger boost because, listen, Justin Jefferson is the real deal. And if you eliminate the last 2 minutes of each half last season, the Vikings go 15-2. And so they were close in a lot of spots last year to winning 11, 12 games. They really should have probably won 11 or 12 games. And I think Kirk Cousins, if you can keep him upright, the offensive line's the big question. I do think there's some buzz in Minnesota this year. I really do.
Okay, and I'll tell you, give me Kirk Cousins over his yardage prop, give me Kirk Cousins touchdowns prop, Justin Jefferson on his receptions prop. Kevin O'Connell said that he's going to be the Cooper Kupp in this offense. How many balls did Cooper Kupp catch last year? For how many yards? These are one of the rare times when it comes to player prop overs. I have zero hesitation. And it's the same thing in Las Vegas with the Raiders. These are 2 teams, I think, with critically underrated quarterbacks. The offenses are going to be very good. You mentioned it, Jared. You get rid of the Mike Zimmer putz factor, and you actually get a competent offensive coach in there. And the mentality of this team is going to change from being defensive-based to offensive-based. And I think you're going to see the Kirk Cousins reap the benefits of that. And even Dalvin Cook to a certain extent. Well, the Rams didn't necessarily run the ball all that much or all that well, but they ran it enough. And I think you get a better back than he's ever had before than what he had in LA. Everybody should be a benefactor here in this offense. There's no if the Vikings don't finish with a top 7, if not top 5 offense in this league, I think something's going wrong. Whether it's injuries or things just fell apart. O'Connell is not a good game coach or whatever it may be. We don't know. We'll learn that along the way. It's hard to be worse than Mike Zimmer. You have to have a concerted effort to be worse.
It's impossible to be worse than Mike Zimmer. Like, honestly, they won 8 games last year despite Mike Zimmer. Like, they had the talent to win 11 or 12 games last year easily. And again, the number that surprised me, I was listening to one of the podcasts last week. Todd Furman's podcast does a great job. And the 15-2 number of what their record should have been if you play 28-minute halves instead of 30-minute halves, like that that's unexplainable. Because they only won 8 games last year. And you're telling me that they left 7 wins on the table that they had leads in with 2 minutes to go in each half? If you eliminate the 2 minutes, that's crazy. So that is a number you will see positive regression on this season. And there was another number I saw that was fascinating. So coin flip games in the NFL. First of all, if you think the NFL is a blowout league, 60% of the games, in coin flip games are determined by when the favorite has just a 60% probability to win with less than 5 minutes to go. 1 out of every 4 games in the NFL is a coin flip game. So it's really, really hard to peg these win totals when you see that a team last year like the Vikings, if all of their coin flip game went the other way, they would have more games and they would have blown past their win total. So you expect positive regression in that category. I think we're both on the Vikings over. You can get an 8.5 at FanDuel for -160. Love that. I just do not see how this team is under 500 this year. I just don't. Not in the division that they play with the other 2 teams that they get to face 4 times.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Speaking of the other 2 teams in that division, let's start with the Lions. I'll phrase it this way. Are you buying into the Lions hype? A lot of the public has gotten on their over 6.5 win total. Dan Campbell's biting kneecaps. So are his players. It's going to be an interesting season for Detroit. I think that they will start to see some dividends offensively if DeAndre Swift can stay healthy. This is a guy that has a ton of potential to go over his prop totals. So I don't buy them, obviously to win the NFC North. And I think it is a coin flip for whether they can get to 7 wins or not. It'll come down to how well they handle close games. As you talked about a moment ago with the Vikings, the final 2 minutes of each half. How well do they execute that stuff will determine whether they get over or not. They're going to be competitive. There's no doubt they're going to be competitive. Does competitive translate into W's? That's a different conversation.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet anything Lions win total related. I would be interested in their game totals, because I do think from everything we've heard in camp and seen, Jared Goff has looked better. He's looked a little more comfortable in this offense in year 2. And the offensive line seems to be a strength. And when Jared Goff is kept upright and kept clean, just like Kirk Cousins, the numbers have been very good in his career. And I think they have some pretty meaningful weapons on the outside. DJ Chark comes in. Can he stay healthy? That's obvious. Listen, any time you get any handicap in the NFL, an injury luck is going to be key. So we're going to operate in a vacuum and just assume that these guys stay healthy. Jamison Williams, another one, if he's healthy, I think he pops off the page as well. And they've got maybe the best slot guy in the league, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And you've got DeAndre Swift out of the backfield catching passes. So Jared Goff has no excuses in this offense with a great offensive line and those great receivers and weapons. The question is the offensive play calling. So you get Ben Johnson that was promoted from tight ends coach to offensive coordinator. Unique situation last year after Anthony Lynn got fired. You can't, again, you want to talk about Mike Zimmer to Kevin O'Connell. You go from Anthony Lynn at offensive coordinator. He got fired midseason. You had Dan Campbell pick up a lot of the play calling duties, but it was Ben Johnson, the tight end coach, who ran the passing game. And that's when you saw Jared Goff's game percolate in the second half of the year. Amon-Ra St. Brown had one of the best closing stretches of the entire NFL last year. And it was because of what was taking place behind the scenes with Ben Johnson pulling the strings in the passing game. Now he gets that promotion to offensive coordinator, a lot more play calling responsibilities. How does he handle that? But if he handles it well, the weapons are there, and Jared Goff feels more comfortable clearly with him than Anthony Lynn. So I think there is potential in Detroit. But again, closing games out, winning 7 to hit this win total, I might not be there yet, but I might be willing to say that the Lions game totals are probably going to be a little bit lower based off of last year's full season numbers, taking into account half of the year with Anthony Lynn, than where they should be. So Lions overs might be a thing game to game, but I'm not quite ready to put the stamp on them to win 7 and be a competitive team in terms of their win-loss record.
That said, I like them in week 1 getting points against different division though. And finally on to the Bears, where the only thing I'm willing to bet is whether Justin Fields will actually survive the NFL season and not end up in a body cast. He was getting rushed in a preseason game, for crying out loud. This is going to be a failed experiment, I think. And it's unfortunate because Justin Fields has all the talent in the world, but I think he ended up in a bad spot in Chicago where they can't protect him and he can't learn anything. And he's going to be running for his damn life.
So here's the thing with the Bears. Matt Eberflus comes in, brings in Luke Getsy from Green Bay, who, listen, there are some people in really smart circles that credit Luke Getsy, who became the Packers quarterback, offensive assistant, quality control, basically guru in 2019, for Aaron Rodgers' resurgence. because Aaron Rodgers kind of dipped off a little bit there in Green Bay, and then all of a sudden the last 3 years, MVPs, number one seeds, they've looked unbelievable. A lot of people credit Luke Getsy for that. Well, he's the new offensive coordinator in Chicago, and he Eberflus. You would think the right way to approach the situation, because Eberflus inherited Justin Fields. He didn't draft him. He wasn't part of that process. To embrace Justin and to bring him into this system, which I think is going to be difficult to do. But listen, when you look at Fields' numbers last year, second half of the year, he really settled down. Over the last 5 games, he was a top 10 quarterback, and he was better under pressure. He's really good out of the pocket. So how does Matt Eberflus adapt to what is a quarterback that he didn't draft, that he didn't really probably pick, and maybe wouldn't pick if he had the choice? And how does Luke Getsy kind of bring that system in and bring Justin Fields into the mix? I don't know what that's going to look like. You mentioned in the preseason it hasn't looked good, and it's hard to argue with those preseason results so far, but I'm willing to give this a chance before I completely go off the rails and bury this team as a 3-4 win disaster. If Justin Fields can adapt, the defense is known to be pretty good in there in Chicago, and I would expect Eberflus to do a good job there. So it is all about Justin Fields and whether or not he can adapt to what is now his second offense in the last 2 years. Very difficult to do as a second-year guy.
Let's get some NFC North Red Hot Chili Proppers here. Go through a couple of them here. Justin Jefferson, receiving yards, 1350.5. I mean, again, there's no reason to believe he won't go over that number, but it is pretty high there, Jared. I mean, that's a beefy total.
I mean, he did go 1,600 and 1,400 in his first 2 years, and the 1,400 year was in a 16-game season. Now, and he only played 14 of those 16 games. He was on track for over 1,600 yards in that 2020 campaign. Listen, all of the and we mentioned this before. On average, 3 out of 4 season-long player props stay under their totals, touchdowns and yards. So I find it hard to bet an over here. Even though if you're going to bet an over with Justin Jefferson 1350, just bet him to win Offensive Player of the Year, because those bets are so highly correlated, and you're getting a much better price. So I would probably stay away from that. And if I were to lean, I would lean under. And if I'm going to bet over, I would just bet Jefferson in the futures market.
I mean, the only thing I would add on Justin Jefferson is that with the news that he will be this year's Cooper Kupp, I would look more at his receptions prop rather than yardage, because I feel like he's much more inclined to catch 120 balls this year than anything else. So get the yards for a second.
If he catches 120, he's going over 1350. I mean, that's.
I agree, and I'm just trying to look real quick for a price on it or a prop on it. While we're doing the show, I'd have to. But I'll do the research on it, figure out. But I think that is just
do it on the next one, and we'll circle back.
Yeah, I think and Justin's going to look for us real quick. But I think it's worthwhile to at least look in that market as well. All right, DeAndre Swift, over 850 rushing yards. The question is, do you believe he'll be healthy enough to get over 850 rushing yards?
If he's healthy enough, this goes over. He's 1,000-yard back. And like I just said, the strength of the Lions team appears to be their offensive line. They did a lot of work there in the offseason. And that's also if you want to think about grit and toughness, personifies Dan Campbell. And I would be willing to bet that they are going to try to establish the run, especially against division teams, outdoors, cold weather. To me, this is a health number. If DeAndre Swift plays 13 to 15 games or more, he should be 1,000-yard back. Period. End of story.
I mean, by the way, Justin Jefferson receptions was 102.5. Boy, that's low.
Yeah, and here's why that's really low. I was just looking at his numbers. He is averaging 15 yards per reception. So if he catches 100, he's averaging 1,500 just without even breaking a sweat. So to be perfectly honest with you, both of those numbers are low if he's healthy. But I really struggle to bet the tippy top of these receiving and player prop markets just because of health. If he misses 4 weeks, you're screwed. And that's a really tough ask, because I think he could still miss 4 weeks and still win Offensive Player of the Year because other guys miss time and he has a big impact. But if he misses 4 weeks, you're not getting enough volume. So those really high player prop numbers, I really struggle with.
Sure. And, Cooper Kupp was not one of the yards per catch guy highest in the league last year. So he's more around like 12 or 13, where Jefferson's up near 15. But again, I'm only going on based off of the comments of Kevin O'Connell saying he's the Cooper Kupp in this offense, and the sheer volume that he's going to get attracts me to that receptions prop. All right, finally, Jared Goff, interceptions, 11.5. This feels like accurately placed, but I would probably, believe it or not, I'd probably lean on the over.
Yeah, let's look what he did last year. I know he threw a lot last year.
He's been
he only threw 8 interceptions last year. And he went over the number 3 years in a row with the Rams, 12, 16, 13. But that was a much more aggressive offense. And they played in a much tougher defensive division in the NFC West, when the Legion of Boom days, the Niner days with those really good defenses, those guys 4 times a year, didn't really have to face that number of secondary, I think, in the NFC North at least. I would go under here. I think it's going to be a better year for him because of the offensive line. And I think he maybe has one of the best offensive line running games in the entire NFL, if that O-line holds up. Because Swift is really undervalued, I think. And they're going to pound the rock. They're going to pound the rock, I think.
What you have to avoid with Jared Goff is that 3 interception game that he has waiting in his back pocket. He's going to have one of those games.
Interceptions are random too. Yeah. Interceptions are very random.
Where he just stinks it up and he can stay under this number. If he has one of those, he's probably in the 13-14 range, enough to push it over. All right, your official plays from the NFC North. I know you mentioned it a moment ago on the Vikings, but at 8.5, even the alternate total is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm going a unit there. Maybe 0.6 to win 1 unit on the Vikings win total over 8.5. Usually I do 2 units on win totals, but that's a juicy one. Maybe I'll risk 2 units to win like 1.2 or whatever it is. Just check my spreadsheet for, how much I actually put down. But this is a bet. Over 8.5 wins in some capacity, whether it's 1 or 2 units, is a stone cold bet. Probably my only NFC North futures bet, preseason at least.
All right, let's move from the NFL to Major League Baseball, as we will get to Nerfy Yerfy in a minute. But first, let's start with, is the trend your friend, Jared? And let's see if we can make some friends here today. Start with the White Sox, 1-9 on the run line in their last 10 road games.
The White Sox are such a fade right now. It's an interesting pitching matchup tonight, though. I know Caleb Wolfinger likes the Nerfy. We'll get to that in a minute. Cueto Bieber. So I'll be honest, Bieber is not having the year a lot of people expected, except apparently me, because I'm the schmuck that bet his under 235 strikeouts preseason. Everyone thought I was nuts. Like, what are you talking about? That's like nothing for him. He's not even going to come close to that this year. His stuff has declined greatly. And Cleveland's been, they've been feisty, but I just can't back this White Sox team right now. So I will friend this trend with you. The White Sox are clearly a fade, obviously. Give me the
All right, speaking of one team that's a fade, the Athletics, 0-10 straight up in their last 10 home games versus Seattle.
Wow. Cole Irvin got knocked around last night.
Logan Gilbert.
Thank you, Cole Irvin, for walking the second batter before you gave up the big hit that got you knocked out of the game. That plus 185 saved our night on the walks prop. Kaprelian Gilbert tonight. Kaprelian's been weird this year. So Gilbert's numbers have been good, and he hasn't faced the A's a lot, and the A's have been really crappy, as that trend indicates. So yeah, I will friend this one too. 2-0. You're 2-0, Zeno.
All right. Well, last one here. It pains my heart. Yankees 0-5 on the run line in their last 5 home games. The Yankees are 0-5 in everything on their last 5 games. So let's just leave that where it is. But that's neither here nor there.
We can save the definitive outcome for this a little later because I know you're curious about betting the Yankees in a specific way tonight, both for and against, which is unique. It's a bold strategy, sir. But I think I think the Yankees, despite the fact that they are in a literal free fall, like the price of Bitcoin right now, I think they are still overvalued every night, despite that. So yes,
Right.
I will friend this trend. Clearly, you cannot lay runs with the Yankees right now. That is not something that sounds appetizing.
All right, on to Nerfy, Yerfy, and the rest of our baseball bets. Nerfy yesterday goes 9-6, up over 32 units since July 1st. So that makes me smile because I'm a big fan of Nerfies. But you're on a couple of them today as well.
Yeah, so I'll give you the the corporate stance. Nerfy picks have been doing very well. Caleb Wilfinger has 2 of them today on the site. One of them is my play of the day. The other one is that White Sox Guardians game. There is a couple Yerfies that pop on my sheet today. And I've been, kind of pushing aside the Yerfies because I do think we're in Nerfyville territory after the first couple months of the season, which were more Yerfyville. Now we've gone across town to Nerfyville. But there is one pitching matchup today that looks very appetizing, and it is in Pittsburgh. Justin Dunn and Tyler Beede. This is a stone cold Yerfy game. Tyler Beade's numbers are awful. He has an 18% walk rate and a whip of over 2.3 in the first inning in his 3 starts this year. And since 2019, he is under 500 to the Nerfy. And again, the average pitcher is about 70%. And he is under 500. Crazy. On the other side, Justin Dunn, gas can. He has a FIP of over 12 in the first inning this year. I'm not going to go nuts about these lineups, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh's been hot lately. Reynolds has popped me a couple times with a home run. He crushed me on a Nerfy the other day when they were facing Boston. And this is on my sheet today, the lowest implied Nerfy percentage. The other one that pops on my sheet today is Boston and Baltimore. The reason why I am not betting that is because I think it's popping on my sheet because they scored a combined 25 runs yesterday, and the total is a little artificially inflated. And that's why it's showing up on my sheet as a green Yerfy bet. Michael Wacha and Kyle Bradish. Listen, Bradish's numbers haven't been bad in the first inning. His expected FIP is in the mid-3s, and he has a 30% strikeout rate. So I'm not betting Boston, Baltimore. I probably will get to the window on Cincinnati and Pittsburgh to the Yerfy, and then I'll save my Nerfy bet for my play of the day.
All right. Walk this way parlay. Hit it and quit it.
Yeah, so I didn't get to the full trifecta today. I only found 2 that I really liked, and I'm not going to force it because it's been a very profitable season for us betting these, and I don't want to give away all my profits the last month of the year. Chris Bubich, over 1.5 at the Rays. I should have bet Brady Singer yesterday in this spot, and I didn't, and I regret it because he walked 4 guys. And now the Rays, who have been a high walk team this year, trending up, especially over the last 30 days against righties. Now they face Bubich, who has a 75% hit rate on the year. That equates to minus 300 odds. 15 out of 20 starts have gone over 1.5. The hit rate drops to 69% if you widen the sample size to include last season, 34 out of 49. That still equates to minus 227 odds. And we're only laying 65 cents for this bet. This bet should be priced at minus 200 or higher. It's not. We're betting it at minus 165. Freddie Peralta, over 1.5. It is an afternoon affair at Wrigley, as most of them tend to be. Brewers, Cubs. Listen, Peralta hasn't been great this year. He's missed a big chunk of the season. His hit rate on this prop is a little under where I'd like it to be at 55%. But a very low sample size, again, just 11 starts this season. The sample size also, if you widen it to a larger view of last year, it's also 55%, 22 out of 40. It only equates to minus 120 odds. So we have a lot of ground to make up here. And I think it's the matchup against the Cubs that pushes me over the limit because 5 of his last 6 starts against Chicago have gone over 1.5, 3 out of 4 at Wrigley. He's walked 17 guys in his last 6 starts against the Cubs. and it's a lot of the same guys that he's facing in this year's lineup. So I feel strongly that the matchup is what gets me a little edge here. So I'll go Peralta over 1.5 minus 140. The parlay is plus 175. It's only a 2-teamer. It's a little baby boy, but we'll sprinkle it anyways for a half a unit, and then 1 unit each on Bubic and Peralta.
All right, my philosophy today, outside of a baseball play being my play of the day, Yankees, Blue Jays. I'm torn. Like, you finally get the manager to come out and chastise the team publicly, as Aaron Boone did, and teams usually respond to that. And coincidentally, the Yankees put their best starter on the mound in Garrett Cole as they face the Toronto Blue Jays and need to stop the bleeding desperately with their best pitcher on the mound. Because, as you said, in a straight free fall, if Garrett Cole gets beat today, I mean, we are beyond panic button at this point in time on the Yankees. They are on the fringe of looking at one of the worst collapses in Major League Baseball history. That's after they blew the 3-0 lead to the Red Sox. Never mind. Anyway, I don't want to bring up old memories.
That one will always go down as the worst collapse. This one wasn't expected, Mark. They weren't supposed to be this good. And they weren't. For now, they're not this bad either. They're so
a 44-16 start nobody would have predicted.
No one had that. That was due for regression. But the problem is they've regressed so much, it's hard to turn the light switch back on. That's the issue that I think they're having right now.
Well, they also have a bunch of injuries and a couple of key player guys in the group are out. But anyway, my thought is this. My thought on the game is this. I'm trying to squeeze into a tight window here. That Garrett Cole, the Yankees on the money line, even though it's a hefty price and overvalued, as you said, at minus 180, Garrett Cole should have a pitching performance enough that's going to get the Yankees a win. However, it's almost like a mini hedge in a sense that I'd take Toronto over 3 runs, a very small number of 3 runs at minus 118. On one hand, Cole could have a 7 innings of shutout baseball and completely dominate because he's always got the ability to do that. But in reality, nobody in the Yankees has dominated as of late. So you figure Garrett Cole can go 6 innings or 7 innings, give up just 2 runs. And the Yankees dumpster fire of a bullpen right now gives up 1 more. Maybe the Yankees win this thing 4-3, 5-3, and I can cash both bets. But that's kind of where my head is on this game today between the Yankees and Blue Jays.
My concern is it's 1-1 in the 8th, and then you're really like that's because there's nothing about this Yankees offense that leads me to believe they can win a game if they give up more than 3 runs right now. So I feel like you're drawing dead early if the Blue Jays get to Garrett Cole. Like you'll win one of the bets, but you'll lose money because they're both minus price. So I wouldn't make this bet, but listen, just try to do something to shift around the vibes in the Bronx. I mean, listen, if it takes you going 0-2 on a money line team total for them to maybe but you won't go 0-2 if they turn things around because you'll at least hit the money line bet. So listen, I hope the Yankees win 8-5, but I don't have much faith in their offense.
I don't either. It's just one of those things where I'm tossing around in my head with Garrett Cole on the mound. What's the best and smartest way to play this thing? I don't want to lay minus 180.
I would just not bet it. I would just not bet this game.
Yeah. Well,
I honestly, I don't know if I'm going to bet a Yankees game minus like prop or something in the nerfy department or in the game total for the rest of the year. They're so overvalued, but now they're becoming less overvalued. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm biased because I'm a big fan. I don't feel very positively about them at all the rest of the year.
Part of what we do here, just talk out some handicaps and some ideas here. Let's see if something's
true.
So
it's an interesting plan. I'll be rooting for you tonight.
Listen, I'd rather get my play of the day right. That one I feel a lot more confident on.
That's fair.
However, we do have some PLL action going on tonight, Jared.
Yeah, it's the last weekend of the regular season. How about that? The PLL season just breezed right by. Chrome Redwoods tonight, 7 Eastern on the plus. Our boy Charlie White is laying, I don't know what it's called in lacrosse. Is it a net line? It's not a ball. It's not a ball line, puck line, run. It's not a run line. A score line, I guess. Minus 1.5. Goal line. There you go. But it's not called that in hockey. It's called a puck line.
No, because they play with a puck. So, I don't know.
So
You
we
score
can't call
goals.
is it the ball line? It's the ball line
Yeah.
for the PLL. Yeah, all right. Either way, he's laying the goal line. Curl -1.5 is best bets article for the site. Archers, Water Dogs later, 9:30 Eastern time, also on the plus. Dan Arestia, we've had on the show, does a great job handicapping lacrosse. He likes the over in that matchup. And then there's 2 more games tomorrow, 3 o'clock, 5:30 Eastern, also on the plus. Last week of the PLL regular season, plenty of content for you to consume over at Pickswise.com.
All right, let's go to our Pickswise play of the day. Of course, you go to the website, Pickswise.com. And, Jared, what are our 3-star bets on the site today?
Yeah, Ryan Hodges targeting the total in that Rangers-Twins game. Also, we've got an MLS play on the site, Real Salt Lake against the Whitecaps, a both teams to score bet. And I mentioned the Caleb Wolfinger's Nerfy bets today. One of them I'll get to in just a minute. The other one is the Guardians and the White Sox. I am probably going to get to the window on that. I will also probably get to the window on this total, but not 100% sure yet because I got to do some research. But I will be doing that research on Pickswise.com because our pal Ryan Hodges wrote it up very nicely for the site. So go check it out.
All right, our plays of the day. I will tee it up to you, my friend, to lead us off.
Thank you, sir. Astros and Braves. Fun series down there in the A. You're not there this weekend, but if you were, it'd be all the rage. The Astros are in town. The cheaters are in town.
World Series
but they've
rematch.
looked really good. Yeah, right. It's true. World Series rematch. Always exciting when that takes place, and it was a very exciting time for Atlanta fans last year. But tonight, it's Christian Javier against Spencer Strider. These two are 26-5 to the Nerfy this season. So Javier's been fantastic. 7-1 on the road. And the one thing I like about this matchup, as I like a lot of my Nerfies to trend towards, not a lot of exposure against the other opposing lineup. Javier, of course, is an interleague game, so they're not going to face each other that much. They did play a little bit in the World Series last year, but different vibes here, sort of. This is still a big series, but not quite World Series vibes. 17 of those 31 plate appearances are against one guy, Matt Olson, who faced Javier a bunch when he was in the American League West with the Athletics. But he's hitting just 133 off him. Does have 2 home runs, but not a lot of exposure to Javier in this Braves lineup. On the other side, Spencer Strider's been unbelievable this year. 6-0 at home. He has the perfect Nerfy stuff, Mark. 160 average, .74 whip, a 40% strikeout rate, walk rate under 6%, a 1.1 FIP, expected FIP right there on par. I mean, he is the ideal Nerfy pitcher, and this is the first time he is facing this Houston lineup. Very tough ask. Meanwhile, the scoring rate for the Astros dropped significantly on the road, from 42% at home down to 28% on the road. Atlanta's been also below average at home this year, 26.5%. They're scoreless in their last 6 games. Great price here, -120 over at the Westgate. I would hammer this one. I might do 1.5 units on it, which I don't do much for Nerfies, but the probability rate's jumping off the page. So Houston, Atlanta, Nerfy -120 tonight down in the South.
All right, I'm going to go out to the AL West for my play of the day as Seattle is in Oakland Mariners versus the A's. And looking at a Nerfy here, James Kaprielian, the starter for Oakland. He's got average numbers on the year, but 15-4 to the Nerfy. And all 3 starts he's made against Seattle so far this year, 0s in the first inning. Logan Gilbert is on the mound for Seattle. Now, he's been averaging the Nerfy over his last month plus. He's just a 3-4 to the Nerfy in his last 7 starts, so he's not doing very well. However, Oakland, the 3rd lowest first inning score percentage rate in Major League Baseball at home this year, just 19%. That should negate this year. It's a little bit of a hefty price to pay with the -132 juice, but Seattle's going to win this game handily. As we talked about in the Trend is Your Friend, they're going to beat up on Oakland. Kaprielian just has to be solid in the first inning as he's been all year long, and we can cash a ticket here. So give me a Nerfy between Oakland and Seattle for my play of the day. All right, that'll do it for us here on Let's Bet It on Pickswise. Again, subscribe to our Pickswise YouTube channel. Download the Pickswise app, free on Apple and on Google Play. For Jared Smith, I'm Mark Zinni. You guys have a wonderful Saturday. Go get it. Go bet it. We'll see you next time.